All right. Well, welcome everyone. My name is Jeanette Munn. I'm the Director of Admissions here at CHSUCOM. And today we're going to be talking about the personal statement. So I'm going to get that pulled up for you all so you can see. But yeah, we're going to start with a little bit of an activity. So if you don't already have paper and pencil or anything like that nearby, go ahead and grab that just so that you can jot some ideas down, take some notes. Again, this is being recorded, so you can always reference back to it later, but always good to kind of have that as you go so you can jot down things that you think of or any of that kind of stuff as we're going through. All right, so let me share this. All right. Can you all see that? Yes, perfect. All right. So we're going to talk about the personal statement here today. If you guys haven't already started your applications, those are open as of May 5th. So you can start applying for the class of 2030, which starts or matriculates in July of 2026. So just so that you are aware that that is happening. So we're going to firstly start off with a little bit of a brainstorming activity. So that's why I asked for your paper and pencil. And then we'll talk about all the things that go into a personal statement, what to avoid, what to include, all of that. And then we'll do some reviewing of different things, a little activity to kind of see what maybe a good personal statement looks like, or an excerpt from that, what a better one looks like, and kind of what to avoid. And then any kind of resources and stuff that you all will need or could use later on. So, with that said, firstly, we're going to brainstorm. Okay. So I want you to take just a moment to jot down, if you already have thought of it, like why are you interested in medicine? If you have any kind of personal aspects to it or anything like that, some kind of encounter that you've had. A challenge or obstacle that you've overcome. So these aren't all necessarily to your why, but all of these will help you when creating your personal statement, right? So not just the why medicine, because not everyone has an aha moment or something like that that happens, but maybe some of these other experiences and things like that will actually help you write your personal statement. So with the things that are on the screen, the why medicine, personal anecdote, a meaningful encounter, any kind of challenge, growth or reflection on a period or moment in your life, something that was important to you or that happened to you or that helped shape who you are. If you did have an aha or a light bulb moment, any strengths that you may have, and how they made you successful, and then any weaknesses that you've grown from. All of those things are things that you can jot down. So take just a minute, and jot down a few things. If you want to throw some stuff in the chat, feel free. If you feel comfortable with that, I don't necessarily need to say those out loud, but you can kind of help other people. Maybe think of their moments and their obstacles and their important moments in time and everything. So take just a second to do that, and I'll give you all a moment. Okay. So now that you've thought of some of those things, we're gonna move right along, and you can add to this list as we go through, as you think of things. But it's really important to kind of just brainstorm. Start with a brainstorm, throw it all out there, see what sticks, and then you can kind of pick and choose what makes sense to your personal statement and the flow of everything. All right. So, what is the personal statement? So, the personal statement, this is your why behind your decision to pursue medicine. So, why are you even doing this? Why do you want to do this? And what are the things that you've done to kind of back that up, right? So, this is the one part of your application where you can actually tell your story. Other places, are can kind of help embolden that story, like your experiences, whether that's work, volunteer, health related, non-health related, all of that kind of stuff is great, but it doesn't let you explain, right? This can give us a sense of who you are. Um, so while AI could possibly be great and help you get started, definitely don't just use AI because it's not going to help you and it's not going to help us in getting to know who you are and telling your story, which is what this is really for. So we want to know what are the things you that have been part of your life that make you who you are and that make you the will make you a great physician, right? So, were there any obstacles or hardships that you overcame? What were those influences that influenced this decision for you, if any? Um, what made you want to learn about medicine and being in the healthcare profession? Have you done anything in the healthcare profession, and has that helped you formulate this life path that you've chosen? And this is where you go beyond those numbers and those metrics, right? So there's going to be those minimums and things like that that you're going to have to achieve, but this tells us who you are. That shows how you can, do academically, scholastically, all of that kind of stuff. But this is who you are as a person, is your personal statement. Um, and the other thing is, what do you want schools to know, right? What do you want them to know about you besides what's in the application itself? What are the pieces that maybe aren't already touched on in the application that you can highlight here? And then if there were any significant fluctuations or life circumstances that happened that kind of show up in your application, this is also a place where you could potentially explain that a little bit more if you haven't been able to throughout your application. But with that, make sure it makes sense within telling your story as well. Okay. Um, the why medicine, that is all about your journey. Again, it doesn't have to be a aha moment, but if you have one of those, great. But this is where you want to tell us, what is it that makes you want to do this? It's a career of passion, right? Like you have to really want to help people and be passionate for healthcare, because it's a hard profession. It takes a lot of time to get there, and so schools want to know why you're choosing this path. And so this is where you can talk about that. Were there any personal health situations that contributed to your journey to healthcare? Did Were your family or friends, did you observe them in a healthcare setting? The birth of a child. Again, all of these are experiences you've had with healthcare, potentially, that could help shape that personal statement. Did you have a really great relationship with a mentor that helped you or that was already in the health field, that helped you get towards medicine? A family member, a parent, a loved one, an uncle, or whatever that are physicians themselves and they helped you or mentored you in any specific way. And then maybe you were a bystander, right? Like you saw something that happened and maybe you weren't able to do something, but you really, really wanted to be able to do that, and that spurred you to look into medicine so that you could be the person that could step in next time. So all of that is stuff that you can think about with regard to the why. Again, doesn't have to be an aha. It could just be that you went into the hospital for something and that made an impact on you. And so all of those things could help you tailor your personal statement. So again, throw them on your whiteboard, on your notes, anything like that if something came to mind. And then all of those you can kind of pick and choose. Break it down. So you want something that's unique to you, right? Schools are going to read thousands of personal statements. And so what's going to make you stand out and what's unique, right? What is something that you didn't already put in your application? Was it a significant achievement that you did? Was it a specific event that happened? Did you have a passion or an interest in something that you can mention with regard to healthcare or your journey to healthcare, because not everyone goes directly into medicine. This could be a second career. It could be a decision that you made because of a certain event when your life was going a completely different direction. Or was there something challenging or deeply moving that you went through that helped you get to this decision? All of those are great things that you could put in your personal statement. And then this is your journey, right? Like everyone has a different path and their path looks different. Again, like I mentioned, some folks will go straight into medicine from school, some will not, and that's okay. But we want to know your path and your journey. And so, how did this happen? How did you become interested? And then what kept that happening? So how are you keeping that interest alive? And then why are you or yeah why are you ready to apply? Right. So again, this is that opportunity for you to tell us who you are and why you'd be a good fit for osteopathic medicine in our case, or medicine in general, whatever that looks like. And so your personal statement is one of those things that gets shared with all schools you apply to. So make sure if you're only applying to one school, then be specific in your personal statement, but most people aren't. So you'll want to not say, I'm applying to CHSU because it will go to every school. So in that regard, keep it generic, but in everything else, you want it to be very specific to you. Um, and so, how are you prepared for this rigorous journey that you're going on? And then for osteopathic medical schools, you want to put why osteopathic medicine, right? Yes, your journey, it's this is the important part of your personal statement, and we want that. But specifically, why osteopathic medicine? If you have that, throw it in there because it can only help you in an osteopathic medical application, right? For them to see that you are specifically interested in this field and why, and all of the things that you've done and everything else in your application can help back up that why. Okay. Let's see. So, what makes a great personal statement? You want to make a connection, right? Paint a picture for the reader, and help them feel what you felt and what you saw. Now, does that mean we need a ton of fluff? Absolutely not. We don't need flowery language or, as I heard my footsteps going down the hallway as I walked towards. It's just going to take up characters in your personal statement, and it's not adding to your story. Okay. Just like it says, this is not a creative writing assignment. Though that can be really fun, it's not going to give you the best bang for your buck when it comes to your personal statement. So you want to find that balance. You want to be able to add all that detail, but not take away from your actual story with too much detail. If you get lost, if the reader's going to get lost in your details, then it's not going to help you. So being specific, but also being personal is where you find that balance. And so what it says here is show versus tell. So you want to show how that moment and what you're talking about was significant, and how that helped shape your path versus just telling us this is what happened and that's the end, right? And we'll go through some examples a little bit later. Does it leave an impact? Okay, you don't want to just list all your experiences. That's for the experience part of your application. That's not what the personal statement is about. Um, so this is something that you want to create as an impact for the reader, something that's going to stay with them. And sometimes that comes from a significant event or something like that. But sometimes it's really just about a well written um, personal statement that made an impact that kind of shared a little bit more about who you are. And so if you have somebody reread your personal statement, if it doesn't leave them with an impact, see if there's a way that you can change that so that it does. Um, Many applicants do have similar experiences like scribing or medical assisting or shadowing or all those kinds of things. So how is yours special and what makes it special for you and your path to medicine? Um, and then you want to make sure it's more of a reflection. So how did this affect you versus just this is what happened? How have you grown from it versus this is what I went through. um, all of that kind of stuff can really add to your personal statement. And then the takeaway. So we heard your story, now what? So you want to tell the reader why this experience was worth sharing. What is the takeaway and the impact that all of those things you put in there have made on you and hopefully have made on the reader? Um, so again, keeping it simple, don't get too flowery, too descriptive, but also making sure that it makes that impact and tells the appropriate story that you're trying to tell. You don't want just kind of, I included this, I included this, I included this as like a little checkbox. You want to make sure that they're actual genuine experiences. Again, don't just use whatever AI creates for you. Take it as a template if you're going to use that, and make sure you're adding in all your specific information and your language. We want it to be coming from you, not from a computer. So keep your experiences and your jobs and all of those things for that section in your application. Use this personal statement as a reflection of who you are versus your resume. Okay. So again, we'll go through a little bit more as we go along, but just as you're kind of jotting down ideas, make sure you're keeping that in mind as well. So as I mentioned, we read tons of personal statements. So we want to make sure that yours, or you want to make sure that yours is memorable. And then you don't have to use all the maximum number of characters that is required in a personal statement, but use what you need. Obviously, don't make it too short because that then shows us that you're not really sharing as much as you possibly could, but you also don't want it to be the entire amount because at that point you're probably adding in too much extra fluff. So kind of finding again that balance of what tells enough about you without being too much, but not being not enough, if that makes sense. Um, and then you want to have a central theme that is going to grab readers' attention. So not kind of going from here to over there to back over here to the future to the past and one way or the other. Keep it somewhat linear, and then making sure that you tie everything back together, you know, um, in your conclusion, if you will, if you set things up like an essay. So with that, um, we'll go through a couple of examples here. So the most impactful moment I had shadowing was with a palliative care physician. The patient was nearing the end of a battle with cancer, but had not yet come to terms with her reality. I watched the physician artfully balance the severity of the patient's condition with compassion and empathy. I was struck by the physician's rapport, how honest yet gentle he remained. It really demonstrated how physicians can dignify their patients in the most difficult situations. Okay, this is great. It tells the reader about an observation that they had with a doctor patient relationship. Now, the takeaway: the doctor demonstrated dignifying patients. Great, but it doesn't share anything personal about the person, about this candidate, right? It just says, oh, I watched the patient or the doctor and the patient, and this is what happened. It's a tell, not a show, right? So what we want to do is we want to make this more of the why. How was this impactful to me? Not just this was the situation, but how did this affect me? Or if I had a personal experience with this patient, um, maybe that interaction was even more impactful to me than just what I observed. Okay. The first day I came into Jane's room, she motioned for me to sit down with her in the chair by her bed. We began chatting, and within an hour, she told me about how her husband had died, followed by her son, then followed by the passing of her daughter. I was astounded. After she told me, she looked out the window and said, "You don't think about it too much, only when the weather is cloudy." That day, Jane exemplified what I have seen in many hospice patients. They are vulnerable, candid, and often resilient. They leave me wanting to do everything I can to ease their burdens. So, this personal interaction with the patient is much more direct and makes the reflection and experience more compelling, right? So, you're getting that personal experience and then also a little bit about how that affected the candidate or you as the candidate, and so how that helps shape why they want to go into medicine. So notice the final sentence. This is about wanting to spend more time with or build a relation. This isn't about wanting to spend more time with or build a relationship with, but ease their burdens. Um, and so something specific like that uh, uh, is what they want to do for all all patients, right? So the overall takeaway and reflection is will do a lot more in this specific example. All right. So editing, physical editing for both your structure and grammar. Perfect, right? You need to make sure you're using some kind of editing tool if it's not already created in your what you're typing in, whether that's Word or whatever. But make sure that you have other people read it. You need that second, third, fourth pair of eyes. Um, you want to use this opportunity to make sure that one, it makes sense, it flows right, right? Like you're not jumping around from here to there, and that it leaves an impact. So you want to, use different people, people who know you well, people who don't know you that well, maybe even because they're going to be able to not see it with blinders on, but with an unbiased opinion, and say, you know what, this part you had me with, but then you lost me here. Um, and so it's always good to have a few different viewpoints to read over it, not just for the physical editing, but also to make sure that it flows correctly, it makes sense, it ties, comes back full circle and ties everything in that you're talking about and really gives a sense of who you are as a candidate. Um, so we really want to know who you are, who you're going to be as a physician, and what things have helped prepare you get there. And so um, I know that Lee says the personal statement can do all of those things, and that puts a lot of pressure on the personal statement. There are a lot of places that get pulled from to back the personal statement up, but this is the big place where you can really share what it is that makes you you and makes you unique, and why you'd be a great fit for that particular program or medicine in general. Okay, so when scoring things, you're looking at when schools score personal statements, they're looking at context and style. So does this seem original and genuine, and did you write it well, right? um, it isn't obviously something that a computer generated or any of that kind of stuff. You're giving specifics and supportive points, similar to how you would write any essay, right? You've got the introductory, the body, and then the conclusion. You want something similar, but you can have multiple sections of the paragraphs inside of that. Make sure you're tying it all together. Again, that underlying theme that kind of ties everything together. Um, your support are those specific examples, making sure that it's organized in such a way that makes sense, maybe chronologically or storyline is what kind of makes it organized. Any of that will help kind of keep the focus and keep the reader engaged. Make sure you plan it out. Again, throw everything on a chalkboard or a notepad or whatever, and then pull those things that really make sense and tie together and tell your story the best. And then of course those grammatical errors and formatting errors and things like that, try to avoid those, and that's where those separate eyes come in as well. um, but those are essentially what this personal statement is looking at on just the um, content and grammatical and error free and all that kind of side. And then on the personal side, we're really just again trying to get to know who you are and what's drawing you to medicine and what's going to keep you in medicine, because it is a hard uh, a really difficult profession to go into. It's got a lot of pieces, and you're going to see a lot of stuff that makes it tough some days, and you have to be able to go back to that why, and this is why I'm here, this is why I'm doing this. And it's those really great moments in those experiences that help you make it through this tough medical journey. um, but You can all do it, and I'm sure you've already had a lot of really great experiences as well. So jot all of those down as you're doing them. Even if you're not at the point where you're writing your personal statement, keep track of all those experiences that you've had, and maybe jot down some specific things that you remember that impacted you. Because in a couple years, when you're ready to write your personal statement, if you're not there yet, you'll forget those things. And so if you have something to reference back to, that will help you when you go to fill out your application, not just for the personal statement, but for your experiences, extracurriculars, all of that stuff, awards, research, everything. Okay, so what to avoid? Obviously, you don't want to exaggerate or lie. Um, not only in your personal statement, but also, with your letters of recommendation or any of that kind of stuff. Be authentic, be honest. That's going to come across in a lot of different ways in your application. The Again, avoid treating it as your resume. This is not your resume. This should not be a list of activities that you've done, or even a list of experiences that you've had. We want to know the most impactful ones, the ones that have affected you, the ones who have contributed to your journey, and the ones that have helped shape who you are as a medical student or a medical applicant. Um, all of your other stuff, your resume type things, can go in other places in the application. We don't necessarily want other people's words. We don't want quotes, right? You can put some in there if they're extremely impactful or have made an impression on you. Again, if it's part of your story, it's fair game. But if you're just using other people's words and things like that, it's not as impactful as if it comes from you. Um, Negativity, talking about bad experiences or things like that, again, if they don't contribute to your story or your journey, then I would avoid it, because if someone's reading this, they may bring it up later and then you have to explain it and all of that. So if there's things that happened with a previous professor or in your job or anything like that that don't necessarily contribute to your overall story, then I would leave those out. Bad physician encounters, again, unless you're turning it around as to where you've seen positive things and gained positive outlooks and experiences from it. Again, I don't necessarily encourage you to put bad experiences in there, um, unless it contributes to your story. Abbreviations and jargon, you have no idea who's going to read your application. So keep it simple, keep it to the point, direct, and personal. And then keep out all of that TMI, right? The too much information. Um, Keep out the fluff and the extra bits that aren't necessary, in the personal statement, and just kind of take up space and all of that. All right. And then when to start. So we get this question a lot. When do I start writing my personal statement? That is completely up to you. If you are the type of person that can type something out and it comes out great or close to great the first time, then it may not take you as long. Can it be done in a day? Absolutely. Should it be done in a day? I wouldn't recommend it. So make sure that you are giving yourself time, when the application process opens. Since it just opened recently, you have plenty of time, but give yourself time not only for the personal statement, but for the whole application. It's not a quick and easy thing. There's a lot of pieces that go into it. So start planning. You can start the application without submitting it, right? You can start it early and just kind of submit it when you're ready. Um, a lot can change in the years as a pre-med student. So if you're not if you don't think you're quite ready to apply to medical school, maybe right now is not the time to start writing it, and write it when you're closer to that moment of being ready to go. If you know that it's going to be soon, then obviously you can start doing that now. But it's never too early to start gathering experiences, to start writing those down. You can start that in your freshman year of undergrad, or maybe even in high school. But undergrad is typically what you're going to be, what medical schools are typically going to be looking at in that time frame. So start writing things down from the start, and making sure that you're keeping track of how long you did this experience and who it was with and all of that, because you'll be putting that into your application, if not into your personal statement. Don't wait too long, because then you're going to be rushing through your personal statement and your application. Um, so know when the deadlines are. For us, the primary application deadline where the personal statement is March 1st of every year. So the application cycle opens beginning of May of every year through that next March. Um, your feedback availability, right? So you're going to need to get letters of recommendation from either faculty that have taught you, potentially physicians that you've shadowed or worked with. And so that can also play into when you do your application. You can still submit your application with your personal statement and everything, even if you're waiting on letters of recommendation, but just know that that can also play a factor in when you're ready to start your application, specifically a personal statement. Um, so we suggest starting first drafts in January of the year you're applying. So that would be January of this year till now. So we're in 2025. So January 2025, the application cycle opens in May, and then you've got plenty of time to get that submitted. When are you ready to submit, or when am I done? So after you've read your personal statement, can you tell what the reason was for exploring healthcare, or whoever's reading it? Did they have an impact? Did it have an impact on them? If so, then you're probably good to go. After reading the experiences you wrote about, can you tell why these were the ones that you chose to add to your personal statement? Are these the best ones that contribute to the overall story that you're trying to tell? And then after reading my personal statement, do I see myself doing anything else than becoming a physician? Right? If you're writing all of this and you go, huh, I don't really have a reason why I want to become a physician. Um, maybe I need to go back to the drawing board, or, and even doing some self-reflection, right? If this is really what you want to do your experiences back up this passion that you have for medicine? And is this really what you want to do? Um, and then after reading your personal statement, what do you think you hope to accomplish as a physician? If you can get all of those things, all of those answered from that personal statement, then you're probably good to go, right? And again, other people reading this and kind of proofreading it and making sure it makes sense, should be getting that from it as well. So here are some of the technical aspects. Both the MD and DO application, or AMCAS and ACOMAS, have pretty much the exact same specifications with regard to character limits. Obviously, you don't want to recycle your statements because they might say different things and have different experiences based on the type of programs you're applying to. Um, and then you want to make sure that you are altering your personal statement based on osteopathic medicine if you have osteopathic experiences versus allopathic medicine if you have allopathic experiences. So again, try not to recycle your statements unless they're just like perfect chef's kiss, and and you don't need to change anything on either side, in which case um, then you can do that. Check for formatting. If you're doing it in a Word document, once you put it into the system, make sure it's still formatted the way that you want it. Um, and then, or type it directly into the online application just to make sure it is the way that you want it. The application does not have a spell check function, so make sure you do that first and then bring it in. Once you submit your personal statement, you cannot change it anymore. So if your application gets submitted, the the very first time, it will no longer be able to be changed. Okay, so just make sure you are aware of that. Make sure it is how you want it before you submit. And as I mentioned, you don't want to be school specific because this will go to all types of or all schools you apply for in ACOMAS. So make sure that you are keeping that in mind as well, unless you're only applying to one school, in which case then it's fair game to be school specific. Um, should I mention the type of medicine I want to pursue? Absolutely. If that's part of your journey and it makes sense in your personal statement, then you can go ahead and put that in there. Um, and then make sure that you are sharing your passions, but not alienating your options or the narrative that you're trying to portray. So um, maybe you're really, really interested in pediatrics, which is great, and we love that. But are you also open-minded? And what are you explaining and trying to tell with regard to your experiences in pediatrics that you're putting in your application? So just be aware of those types of things. We want to know your passions. We want to know what you're interested in and why, and the things that are backing that up. But if you say you're really love working with kids and none of your experiences have anything to do with kids or any, there's nothing to back that up, then is it really telling your story? And then make sure that you're researching the schools ahead of time to find those things that maybe speak to the overall mission, right? Like school specific is going to be, um, the schools that you're applying to. But if this application is going to every school, find those things that are important to all of the schools that you're applying to, that are hopefully also important to you, and then you can speak to that in your personal statement as well. Okay, so let's do, and I haven't seen any questions in the chat or anything, so I will just keep moving right along. So we're going to do a little bit of an activity here. So we'll kind of review this, and I'll read it out, but you might be faster than me. So we're going to kind of review this and see where we can tweak it. So one late Saturday evening, as the sun began to set, an unconscious young woman was being rushed into the emergency department by EMS following a head-on collision on the busy and on the busy 5 o'clock traffic highway. The nurse was on top of her performing chest compressions and shouting and screaming for assistance as onlookers in the hospital looked on in horror on their way to the trauma bay. She appeared to be about my age, and you could see the dried blood on her bruised face as the white hospital walls glowed with energy and terror. Shortly after being transferred to the trauma bed, the physician scrubbed in, gathered his team, and attempted to resuscitate her 3 times, all of which were unsuccessful. The buzzing of the vitals monitor and the flat rhythm and beep were the only sound present as the room grew heavy, grim, and dim with despair. A teardrop slowly wound its way down my cheek as the physician said, "That's too bad we couldn't bring her back. She was so young." My tears began to flow freely and echoed as they hit the cold linoleum floor. Okay, feel free to put comments in the in the chat, or if you want to speak, what are your thoughts on this particular statement? Did it leave an impact? What would you change? What did you like? What didn't you like? Anybody?
Hi.
Hi.
Hi. I think there's a lot of kind of description that maybe isn't completely needed. Yeah,
Okay.
like what Nancy said. I'm sure that a lot of that right information can be removed. Um,
Okay.
and it's kind
So
of taking away from the, oh, sorry.
no, you go ahead.
I was just going to say it kind of takes away from the main message. Um, yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you so much. And thank you, Nancy, as well. So, yeah, so there's a little bit of fluff, right? Like, while it paints a picture, it's not necessarily what you're trying to paint, right? You're trying to tell the situation and what you took from it versus how horrible the situation was, right? Like, I'm taking away, wow, this was a terrible situation versus how this helped your story. You told someone else's story really well, but it didn't tell your story, right? So, how about this? One late Saturday evening in the middle of my shift as a scribe, an unconscious young woman was rushed into the emergency department by EMS following a head on highway collision. The nurse then began to perform chest compressions on the way to the trauma bay. The patient appeared to be about my age with a bloody and bruised face. After being transferred to the trauma bed, the physician attempted to resuscitate her 3 times, all of which were unsuccessful. The room went silent as the doctor stated, "It's too bad we couldn't bring her back. She was so young." That exact moment was when I knew that medicine was my calling and that working with children, youth, and ensuring their future and right to life was what I wanted to do. So this essentially tells the exact same story with about half the words, but also shows how you can take that, even though you're telling a much shorter story, you're still telling the exact same story, but how it affected you. And so that leaves an impact on the reader about who you are. This moment was when I realized that I really wanted to work with children to ensure that um, that they have, a chance at life and doing what and this is what you want to do. Okay, so that tells us more of who you are as a candidate versus just the situation. All right, so here are some resources that you guys can utilize if you'd like, as well as us. We're a great resource too. And so hopefully that helped you kind of hone in on the pieces of a personal statement that you want to add, as well as kind of how to formulate it a little bit. But one of the big things is keep a journal or keep some kind of note on what you have done and the experiences you've had. And it doesn't have to be like a daily thing, but just something that you get in the habit of doing when you have those experiences to remind yourself, oh, that was important. This was the impact. This is what happened, and then you can kind of tuck it away and come back to it later, so that when you go to write your personal statement, you have that ready to go, and aren't trying to remember what happened, who was there, where was I working at the time, what was the situation, all of that kind of thing. Obviously, if it had that much of an impact on you, you're probably going to remember it, but there's other pieces to that that will help you in other parts of your application, like experiences uh, and all and awards and things like that. Um, the pre-med playbook is also a great way. They have lots of different books, but there's a specific one on the personal statement. You can also look at the ACOMAS or AMCAS websites. Um, they all have things about personal statements and how to write it and advice and things like that as well. There's an applicant guide for both ACOMAS and AMCAS, and then other different resources and things like that that you guys can look at on both the MD and DO side, which we have included here. And then again, we will share the recording so that you can always reference back to that, or you can email us. We're happy to answer any questions that you might have about your personal statements or the application in general as well. Okay. And I'll put our email in the chat, but I believe it's going to be here at the bottom as well. So comadmissions@chsu.edu. We want to know who you are, be original, tell your story, be honest, and be you. So all of our reviews of personal statements and of interviews and everything else are really to get to know who you are and if you're going to be a good fit for us. And our goal is to hopefully help you understand if we're going to be a good fit for you as well throughout the whole process. So thank you so much for being here for the presentation. I'm going to stop the recording, but we'll continue to chat here for any questions that you all have. So thank you all so much, and please email us with any questions or anything that you have going forward.